The other thing that the newer oils are doing is they're adding stabilizer in there. Gasoline engine, if you take a gallon of gasoline and put it in a storage container, it has a shelf life of 3 months. In 3 months, gasoline will lose the lighter fuel molecules, and it'll start to go stale. And when gasoline goes stale, it turns into varnish. And it will coat the inside of your fuel tank, the carburetor. It starts to gum things up. And so it has a shelf life, a recommended shelf life of 3 months. 2-cycle mix, once I mix 2-cycle oil in a gallon of gasoline, it has a shelf life of 1 month. And you'll see people that'll take their string trimmer out of their garage, been sitting there all winter, pull it out of the garage, start it up, can't figure out why it won't run. Fuel's been in there since last September or last August when they last used it to trim some weeds, and they can't figure out why when they take it apart, it's all gummed up. It's because it has a shelf life of 1 month. Or they pull out of off the shelf the container with what was left over from last October or August, and they pour it in their tank and they can't figure out it won't start. Well, as it sits there and it ages, it loses all the properties that make quick starting. And so it fouls the spark plug really fast and you have a hard time starting it. So if your fuel is over a month, you should dispose of it properly and mix new fuel up. The best thing to do is mix up enough fuel for whatever you need and don't mix up extra. Don't just mix up 2 gallons because this does 2 gallons and it's convenient. We'll figure out what half of it is and only mix up half of it, or only use a quarter of it. And you can buy different containers. This one here, what I like about this is it has a little chart here, and I can actually take out of a big container just the amount of oil or fuel I want to mix up. You squeeze it, fill it up, and I can mix it up. So I can mix up a half a gallon, I can mix up a quarter of a gallon, or I can mix up 4 gallons simply by metering it out. So that's an advantage you see of this type of container. You can buy a fuel stabilizer. If I take gasoline and I put a fuel stabilizer, and Stabil is a brand name for a fuel stabilizer, there's more than one. This is probably the most well-known one. What this does is takes it from 3 months and it gives you basically a year. And what it does is prevents the fuel from actually turning to a varnish. You still lose the lighter fuels, lighter molecules, and so your fuel won't burn as well, but it prevents it from turning into lacquer thinner or varnish and gumming everything up. So it will extend the life of the system, but it's not a cure-all. It doesn't magically make fuel not break down. What these two people do, if you read the package, they actually add stabilizer into the fuel. So if I do use this fuel will last longer than 1 month because it has stabilizer built into it. And so when I look at it, it says this is a 50-to-1 mixture. And if I bought a John Deere container like this, it'd be exact same size container with the same volume in it. But instead of being some of it, this has some stabilizer and then some oil. That would be just oil. That's the difference between them. And so keep that in mind. Diesel fuel, a lot heavier fuel, it has a shelf life of about 6 months. And then it starts to kind of slowly go downhill. If you take diesel fuel and leave it in a fuel tank, it takes a long time before it will varnish up and really cause a lot of problems, but it will. In about a year or so, it'll start to degrade, and it will start leaving varnish and gum deposits, and it will cause you problems. But it's not as volatile as far as causing those kind of issues as gasoline or 2-cycle mix. When I bring a piece of equipment in here that's been sitting out here, my #1 problem is the fuel system. Whether it's a 2-cycle or a gasoline, and the thing that agitates it the most is heat. If you store your fuel somewhere where it's hot, you store your equipment out in the sun, it's going to degrade faster. You could put it into a barn or a shed, it's going to go less. If the storage container is insulated so it doesn't get so hot, the fuel will last longer and it will not break down as fast. So those are some simple things that you can do.